There's a channel called Horses. Not something I would have thought I'd be clicking on, unless I do like watching people at competitions. I like dressage, but it doesn't cover horses. Turns out, to my knowledge, it covers life and culture and politics, and in that deep way. I saw a breakdown of what is communism, what is fascism, what is yada yada yada. Beautiful video essays. I definitely recommend the channel. Again, that is Horses. And here they are pointing out what causes just about all of our problems these days. The answer will not surprise you in the slightest. According to Horses, I should say.
Stoke chaos to sell ads. Social media sucks our blood for data brokers. The planet burns because of corporate interests, etc., etc. Talking about problems feels like an act of redundancy. Painful, maddening redundancy. Because these problems keep leading right back to the same place, over and over. Once you've followed these roads enough times, that destination becomes grotesquely familiar. It's like you've been there before. You've arrived at the same conclusion before. It's a bizarre feeling. You stand there certain you've been following a new road, a road you've never seen before, and yet there you are.
This reminds me, Shade Dragon. Following this, if you're sticking around, I would like to talk to you about not burning out, because I think what he's talking about right now is very much related. But because it's a long one, I'm not going to interrupt it much more.
Same pit of mud you were last time, and the same one you realize you will be in next time. We as Americans call this place our home. This place powers our civilization, but so many of the issues that plague us in our day-to-day lives insist on bringing us back to this place. This place, of course, is capitalism. And yet to imagine another system is almost impossible. Capitalism is part of our identity, not just in America, but increasingly around the world. And whenever capitalism presents us with problems, as it often does, we just throw more capitalism at them. Why is this? Why are we so stuck in this system that it seems absolutely impossible to even conceive of an alternative? Well, there is an answer to that, a pretty definitive one, in fact. And we will get to it. But before that, it's important to dispel some of the myths about capitalism as we know it today. There is this idea that capitalism somehow evolved from some natural human tendency, that humans are instinctually driven towards the profit motive, and capitalism is just a name for something that has always existed in one way or another for a very long time. It always has been, and it always will be. Knowingly or not, most people are citing the early capitalist Adam Smith when they make this argument. In the 1800s, Smith saw people trading goods for profit and thought this was just human nature. He said people trade things for other things, and then someone comes up with money and we naturally get to capitalism, whether we try to or not. But Smith just made this up. It never happened. There is no historical or anthropological record that indicates the concept of money emerged from barter. In reality, Smith was already living in a capitalist system. He was just observing the things going on around him. In truth, throughout almost all of human history, resources were exchanged in gift-giving systems based on personal favors. You gave me some fish one time, so here's some milk. This idea that capitalism existed before it was named is simply untrue. People like Adam Smith still say capitalism is natural, that it caters to our human nature in a unique way. This is true. It's also a very bizarre, kind of disgusting way to justify a capitalist system. Greed is certainly within our nature. A desire for intense personal success, even if at the expense of other people, that could be in someone's nature. Capitalism rewards these things, but I don't think anyone would say these are good things. Qualities are not good just because they could be considered natural. Our economic system should not be set up to maximize the darkest parts of human nature. Do we really want the greediest people at the very top of our society? In what world?
Part of why I like this guy right here. the ability to go back and ask simple questions about complex problems. Is this in our nature? That's a simple question. If it is in our nature, should we be encouraging it? Another simple question. I personally have answers for this, but it's irrelevant to the larger conversation that I have rather beliefs about this, which are subject to change as new information comes in, is how I should phrase that. But as I was saying, it's irrelevant. I just really wanted to pause for a moment and appreciate the kinds of things this guy addresses, and why I think his content is stuff we should all be checking out.
Does this sound like a good plan? Still, you will often hear people say that capitalism works. It may not be perfect, but it works. People have jobs mostly and can go about their daily lives. We have iPhones and computers and cars. Well, the people saying that are usually people like me, people who have good jobs, were born into decent circumstances, and came into this world with a not insignificant set of advantages. For those people, yes, capitalism works. I think if you asked people who work 50 hours a week and still live in project housing, they would not be so positive. 8 million people die every year because they can't access health care. Over 1 million die because they can't afford good drinking water. There have been millions of deaths in wars fought over material resources. European colonizers killed 50 million native people in the Americas. The British Empire killed 165 million Indians in the name of capitalism. 42 million people in the world's richest economy live in poverty every single day. We have dot-com bubbles, bank bailouts, auto bailouts, stimulus checks. The American capitalist economy is so unstable that every few years it threatens to collapse and can only be fixed by huge amounts of government spending. Does this sound like something that really works? I mean, if capitalism itself was a business, it would have been shut down long ago. Imagine a world where Coca-Cola products kill millions of people every year and require billions of dollars in regular cash injections just to stay afloat. Capitalism cannot even pass the test of its own existence.
So then the question becomes, what do you do instead of capitalism? And if you guys want, we'll check out the remainder of that video, certainly. But, I would like to then ask this question. What is the system that bails out capitalism? Because that's what we should be putting our energy into working with. That's what we should all demand a right to. And it's socialism, pretty much. Socialism bails out capitalism. Putting it frankly, when the biggest representations, the biggest entities of capitalism run into problems, what happens? Because our lives are built around capitalism. Everything we do costs $1. You want to exist and you don't want to bake to death? Better pay for air conditioning. Better pay for the electricity. You want to talk to your mother? You better pay for internet or a cell phone. You want to apply for a job? So on and so forth. Do you want to participate in this world? Do you want to go out to the movies? $8, popcorn, $1 billion, I assume. I haven't been to the physical movies in a long time. We rely on capitalism because we have been given no choice. And so when we are in danger, capitalism needs to be bailed out. And the thing that bails it out is socialism. Enough people are dependent upon these capitalist entities that they cannot be allowed to fail. And so our tax dollars are then distributed in such a way as to keep those entities going. And the problem is that those entities keep deciding to operate in such a way as to keep a very small number of people who are part of how they function wealthy and the rest poor. They're each like a little mini kingdom with a very rich king and very poor paupers, peasants, the serfs. And this country ends up being made of capitalist serfs. That's myself. That's you. Closest, hell, the closest we are Robin Hoodin, woodsmen and ladies hanging out on our lonesome. But let's have no illusions here. The kingdom of Comcast and Disney and all these other gigantic places, they have a bigger footprint than we do. Here's what you can do about it. I'm not saying that we get rid of the concept of money. That's not even at all where I'm going with this. I'm just saying that as we transition, because we will transition, we have no choice but to transition. As we transition to manners of arranging things that are more equitable for all, so we cut out the needless death and suffering that is built into our current system, pay attention to who you're playing the game with. Right now, and probably for the majority of our lifetimes, we have no choice but to the remaining majority of our lifetimes, if not all of it, let's say that. We have no choice but to play the capitalist game, but you can choose how strictly you follow the rules. Imagine you're giving a loan to your kids. How strictly will you enforce that loan? Probably not very strictly. That's sort of the reason a parent does a loan as opposed to a bank when that happens. Let's say you're operating with, I don't know, a betting pool with your buddy. And your buddy loses and they can't pay up. What do? Do you break their legs? No. You say, and you move on with life. And maybe one day they surprise you and say, you remember last year when we bet on the whatever? Here's the $50. With companies, be ruthless. It comes down to this. Follow the rules of the game ruthlessly when you're working with folks who are doing great at it. If it's a billionaire that you're talking about, require that the rules are ruthlessly enforced with them to the letter. But if you're hanging out around folks that are doing badly under capitalism, if somebody's covered in dirt and they have their hand out, give them $1 without requiring anything else from them. If the boss man asks you to give your labor for free, if they say, can you come in and help us clean up the shop? It's not your normal job, I know, but this place just really needs it. I'm thinking I'll make hot dogs. Hint, hint, there's no overtime. No is the answer. Because the game of capitalism requires that your time be compensated with money. Always. Just pick and choose who you're going to play this game with. And remember that if they are doing better than you, then you play the game ruthlessly. And if they are not doing better than you, then you play the game as gently as you possibly can, if you play it at all. Got more to talk about.